Are you a crier? Maybe you just can't help but cry at almost everything, or maybe you find it almost impossible to cry. Well, the psalmist is crying here in today's Psalm, Psalm 77. Or I suppose you could call it more lamenting. Why is he lamenting? Because God's people are in captivity. Because they've rebelled against God, and he's allowed this foreign nation to come and drag them away from their own land. And the psalmist is lamenting that this isn't what he wants. He hates it. He doesn't like it. He wants to be back in their own land. He wants to be free from their captors. And he really is saying it as it is. Listen to this, what he says in verse 8. He's talking about God. Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Well, of course, the answer's no. But it's his crying, it's his lamenting and speaking out how he feels that brings him to his senses. Because listen to verse 10. Then I thought, always good to think clearly and straight, times of real emotion. To this I will appeal. And what does he appeal? Well, he appeals to God's mercy. He also appeals to the great memory of what God has done for his people. How he's never abandoned them. How he's always heard them, even in the most dire of times. When I first read this, it took me straight away to Luke 15. I thought about the prodigal son. Remember him? That awful, arrogant son who went to his father and said, basically in effect, listen, Dad, you're living much longer than I wanted. Could you just give me your inheritance, my inheritance now? He goes, he squanders it, he blows it. The only job he can get is feeding pigs, and yet it's in the pig pen he's brought to his senses, just like the psalmist in a sense here. He reflects on what he's done and how wrong he's been, and he remembers back at his father's house how his servants have so much more than what he's got now, and so to this he'll go and appeal and ask and beg for mercy. And of course he goes and he gets far, far more than he deserves or expects. His dad throws his arms around him, gives him a robe, a ring, and a roast. This is our God. Listen to verse 13. Your ways, God, are holy. What God is great as our God? And right at the end, verse 20, he delights in the fact that God still leads his people. Even when they've sinned, even when we've rebelled, if we go in repentance and brokenness, asking for mercy, asking forgiveness, asking him to lead us, he'll always hear us.